Hello, I am Jacob Stein, and welcome to this presentation on remote law firms. We have some wonderful speakers for you today on this topic, and I will make a brief introduction of the topic and each of the speakers, and then let them take it from here. So we have three really wonderful speakers, and they are first, Diane Camacho. Diane has spent more than 30 years as head administrative officer at various law firms. And in 2013, she started her own law firm management and consulting practice, where she consults lawyers and law firms on various management, operations, technology issues. Diane speaks frequently on these topics. I've heard her speak on, starting up law firms, on accounting for law firms, best software for law firms. And she also teaches law firm management at San Francisco State University. She's a wonderful, wonderful speaker and highly experienced. Then we have Larry Cohen of Cohen Communications. Larry advises lawyers on sales, so lead generation, lead conversion, business development. He helps lawyers overcome their obstacles that they may have related to business development. He coaches lawyers on running their practices, working with other lawyers, right, with other humans, time management. Larry has been coaching lawyers for over 30 years. He has coached over 1,000 lawyers, from solo practitioners to, multi-million dollar rainmaker at some of the biggest law firms in the world. Larry is likely one of the most sought after law coaches in the United States. He has written books on these topics, and he's developed a really cool app that I've used myself called BizDev Coach that helps lawyers with business development, which is really cool. And then after Larry, we will have Michael Bono. Michael is a partner at our law firm at Allianz. We're a global law firm, and Michael is, he's a highly experienced corporate lawyer. He has acted as outside general counsel for lots of tech companies for many, many years, and he is very tech savvy, and he leads our law firm's sort of global efforts on AI integration and AI use. Michael's been an early adopter of AI, especially for law firms, for lawyers, and he is very experienced on this topic. These are wonderful speakers with lots of experience, and they're going to share all of that experience with you. But before we get there, before we get to the speaker, just a brief introduction what remote law firm topic is all about, and how do we get here? So law firms evolved, right? You have solo practitioners practicing law going back to, 1700s, maybe even 1600s back in England. And then with the advent of the Industrial Revolution, you see solo practitioners joining forces and forming law partnerships. And, these are still small firms, 2, 3, 4 lawyers joining forces, creating the early version of the English chambers system. And then in the early 1900s, maybe 1930s or so, in the United States, the cravat system is developed, and the cravat system, it's the big law firm that we are used to that uses the leverage system, right, where you have a few partners at the top overseeing management, lots of associates, right, and that's how the partners make money. And this is the system that we've had all through the 20th century. And then the mid to late 1980s, we see the evolution of something new starting to take shape, and that's the early version of the remote law firm, sort of a remote law firm 1.0. In the United States, it was a firm called Fisher Broyles, and then others followed later in the late 90s, early aughts. And with this structure, you have a firm it's a firm, but you don't have lawyers sitting in a centralized office. Everyone is sort of dispersed, distributed in their own office or from home. And this structure became super popular during COVID, right? During COVID, it just became acceptable to work remotely. And lawyers said, well, I don't need to be in an office downtown. I can work from home, from a home office, or I can rent myself a little office space near to where I live, right? And I do not need to commute. And this became acceptable for lawyers. This became acceptable, more importantly, for clients. And now we're seeing so many lawyers working remotely, whether they're at big law firms or solo practitioners or not. But this structure, the remote law firm structure, and sometimes it's called the distributed law firm. In the past, it used to be called the virtual law firm, starts to take shape. So these are not virtual law firms. I really don't like to use that term because a virtual firm suggests that maybe it's not a real firm. These are real law firms. Our firm, I think, is a great example. We started this journey to transition to being a distributed firm about a year ago. And we are a real law firm. We're actually a global law firm with offices in 25 countries. And in the United States, we decided that we want to grow on a distributed basis, meaning that we're not going to have centralized offices with lots of lawyers in a single office because that's just incredibly expensive. Rent is the number one cost item on any law firm's income statement. We don't need to have a lot of overhead staff that you usually would find in a law firm. And by eliminating rent, by eliminating a lot of overhead positions, first of all, the profitability of all of our lawyers went sky high. And second, we really like the idea that lawyers can practice very independently. We don't need to provide them with a lot of oversight. Our lawyers are fairly senior, right? They've been practicing law for a long time. They do it well. They do not need the law firm itself to look over their shoulder and tell them what to do. So lawyers in our firm get to work as many hours as they want to. There is no minimum billable hours requirement. They can pick any clients they want to represent. They set their own billing rate, how they work, where they work from. That's all entirely up to them. The purpose of the firm is to support them, not to tell them what to do, but to support them. So the firm provides them with bookkeeping, billings and collections, with paralegals, with software subscriptions, with IT support, right? All of these different things that you would expect from a law firm, but in a very hands-off approach. And as a result, the profitability is incredibly high. Our lawyers take home 80% of their collections. That's huge, right? Compared to 35% at a traditional law firm. So profitability combined with independence, but at the same time, having access to a big law firm, the credibility of a big law firm, the ability to refer work to other lawyers and get origination credits, so the ability to work in teams, the ability to provide mentoring or get mentoring, right? Access to all sorts of systems and software that usually as a solo practitioner you would not have. So really trying to capture the best of both worlds, right? What's the best about being a solo practitioner or being in a small firm? What is the best about a traditional big law firm? And trying to combine those two together. And we're not the only firm with the structure, with the remote structure. There are a number of other firms. As I said, during COVID, these firms sort of exploded and have grown significantly. In the UK, there are firms like this with this structure that are publicly listed companies. The one I'm thinking of is called Keystone Law. In the United States, other firms with the structure, the big ones include Rimon Law, the Potomac Law Group, Pearson Ferdinand, Fisher Broyles is still in business, English Taylor Duma, and there are a few others. But again, the idea is how do we give our lawyers as much independence as they want to have? How do we give them high profitability? And how do we at the same time support them with the big firm infrastructure? So that's the evolution of the remote firm. I personally think it's a wonderful model. I have spent the past year speaking to, I think, well over 100 lawyers who have been practicing at these types of law firms and speaking to the management of these firms. And I think for lots and lots of lawyers, it's just a wonderful way to practice law. And I think, honestly, I think it is the future of the legal profession is towards these types of structures. It's just very flexible, sort of an open architecture type of a law practice. Well, with that, I'm going to hand it off to my colleagues. Again, I'm Jacob Stein. I'm the managing partner of Alliant in the US. We do operate on a distributed basis. We are recruiting lawyers across the United States in all practice areas. If you're interested in speaking with me, please reach out, and I will be happy to speak with you. And with that, I am going to hand it off to Diane Camacho. Thank you.
Thank you for that introduction. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm going to talk about finances and technology, primarily when you're opening a new firm, and talking about a virtual firm. So this is something that my team does on an ongoing basis for folks across the country. We are currently working with about 3 firms, I think, right now, getting ready to launch new firms. So one of the things that we talk about in the very beginning, before even a decision is made, hopefully, is the importance of having a very good and detailed pro forma budget. This helps you understand what it's going to cost you, how much it's going to cost you on a monthly basis, and how much your profit will be. And hopefully it will be more than being in a large firm, which is many of our current clients that are opening firms are folks with a practice. Some of them are practice groups, and they're normally leaving larger firms and starting up their own boutique firms. So the pro forma budget is the very first thing to do. It shows what you think you're going to bring in based on what you have brought in, obviously, in the past. And we normally take 80% of that or so, assuming that that'll be your revenue going forward, and then your expenses. And these are everything from the cost of your software to your benefits and your insurance. And then we talk about the difference between how much you're going to make and your expenses, and how you're going to fund the difference. So when you're starting out a law firm, that's really important to know right at the beginning, obviously. And a lot of times attorneys kind of do the back of the napkin kind of calculation, and this helps to really be specific. And oftentimes these budgets are used when attorneys are going to banks for funding. So it's very important to have a good pro forma budget. That's the first thing you should do, really, before anything. And then when you're talking about your finances on an ongoing basis, it's important to have what we call checks and balances. This is the way that you protect yourself from any theft, if you will, but any opportunity for somebody that works for you to dip into your money. And we always think that, well, I know them, they're worked for me for 20 years, they would never do that. But what I try to say is, what if their child is in a hospital and they need a $5,000 for a special operation in 2 weeks, and they don't have it, and they have access to your operating account? We don't know what people will do. We don't know what situations they're going to be in. So I always try and make sure that our firms are not setting their employees up with the ability to steal from them or borrow from them, if they will. One of the easiest things to do is make sure that you're reviewing your bank statements, or now you just review your bank activity online. Make sure that you understand and know who the vendors are that you're paying, that nobody has set up a fake vendor and is now paying that vendor, but it's really their husband. Make sure that you know what your expenses are. And a lot of the new online bill.com, those kinds of things, you can actually pay your vendors without having to sign a check. But there are ways to make sure that you, as the owner, have to approve those payment allocations before they're made. So just make sure that you are reviewing all of your expenses and all of your income, and that you are aware of what your vendors, what you're owing your vendors, and who your vendors are. Access to accounts. There are ways to have your accounting department or somebody in accounting have access to print your statements and look at your balances without having the ability to withdraw money or sign checks, especially with your trust account. Nobody should have access to take money out of your trust account except for an owner of the firm. And you can, work it so that maybe somebody does that doesn't necessarily write checks and all that kind of thing. But my advice to our clients is always, as an owner, make the withdrawals from your trust account. It's very easy online, takes 3 minutes. It's another hassle, but your accounting department can say, here, this is the trust transfer that we need for this month. And these are the clients it's for, and the total is $50,000, and you go in and make the $50,000 transfer. Make sure that you are aware of, and this is something that most attorneys do anyway, is make sure that you're aware of who your clients are and who you are billing, and if those bills have appropriate expenses on them, and they are appropriate amounts of time, and that they are people that are really working on that case for you. Just different things like that. And like I said, pre-bills normally attorneys look at pretty carefully, but just be aware of that you know what the expenses are for those. And then the accounts payable is another way for you to check things. As I mentioned, if you're signing the checks, you want to have all the backup. You don't want just somebody to hand you a check and say, sign this. You want to be systematic about it. Maybe it's every other week, whatever. You get a stack of checks to sign. You get the backup for them, the invoice for them, and you know what you're signing. If it's an online, like I said, bills.com, you want to make sure that you are going in there and you are approving those expenses before they're actually paid. So just make sure that there's checks and balances. And the best way is to know what's coming in and going out of your firm. Understand who you're paying and what you're paying for. When you're looking at reports, we always look at the profit and loss and the balance sheet because that's what our CPA wants. That's what you provide them so that they can do your taxes. If you're getting a bank loan, that's what they want, those kinds of things. But there's a lot of other reports that help you manage and understand your firm and your income. One of them is the hours report, and the hours report should be how many hours are worked, how many hours are billed, and how many hours are collected. It's nice if you say, this attorney, their expected hourly billable is 125, and they worked 120, and we billed 115, and we collected 100 hours. So you can look at your realization rate, how much they're supposed to be working versus how much they're working, how much they're billing versus how much they're collecting, and then you can really understand what your revenue is on the biller. Remember that your widget is $1. So you want to know how many dollars you're collecting. I'm sorry, your widget is an hour. So you want to make sure that you are in complete understanding of your hours and where they're getting written off or where they're not being billed, things like that. It's often important to know what types of cases you're working on. So if you're working, you say you're estate planning and you do estate planning and you do trust administration and you do probate, how much money is coming in from each of these lines of revenue can help you decide on staffing, on expansion, on marketing, on all of those kinds of things. So it's nice to know what you are making in each profit center, if you will, to make business decisions. Remember that reports are for you to help you make business decisions and to manage your business better. The referral sources. This is becoming more and more common, yet there are still a lot of firms that aren't tracking this. Marketing in our world for attorneys can be a really big commitment. It can be a lot of money. Some firms, they do it all with word of mouth. It's still nice to know who sent it to you. Say you're working with the bar association. You want to know how many cases you're getting from the bar association for that particular bar association. Maybe you're a member of your country club and you want to see how many clients you get from the country club referrals. And then you can say, okay, so I'm getting 5 referrals from the country club, and last year it totaled $1 million. And I'm getting 20 referrals from the bar association, and I'm making $50,000 on those referrals, where obviously you want to spend more time at the country club versus spending more time at the bar association. So understanding where your money is coming from and understanding how to allocate your time and efforts is important as well. We can't talk finances without talking about your trust and IOLTA account. We all know how important it is for you as a business owner to be managing your client's money effectively and appropriately. And there are rules in every state for how you are supposed to do that. There are still attorneys that are not in compliance. Oftentimes it's not because they are intending to be out of compliance, but they just simply don't necessarily understand what the requirements are. One of the things is that attorneys get sanctioned and disbarred for is borrowing money from your trust account. So, oh, payroll is due on Friday. I've worked I've worked 50 hours and I have the money from trust for those hours. I'm just going to transfer the money from trust now so that I can make payroll. Well, you can't take money from your trust until your client has been billed for it. Working it doesn't mean it's your money yet. Your client has to be billed for it. And technically, they have to have an opportunity to say, I don't agree with that bill. So never take money out of your trust account until you've billed those clients. If you have to bill twice a month for cash flow, bill twice a month. Commingling funds. If you get a check and any part of that check is not yours, whether it's your client's opposing party, a beneficiary, anytime any money is not yours, it goes into the trust account first, even if you're dispersing it the next day and you're getting part of that money. Always start in the trust account. Banking fees should not be paid from the trust account. Most banks will set it up so that your fees for operating that account come out of your operating account, not your trust account or IOLTA account. If your bank does not do that, my advice is find another bank. However, if your bank doesn't do that, you can have a certain amount of money in your trust account allocated to administration, and then you're not taking money away from your clients to pay for bank fees. Improper access to accounts, that's when you are allowing somebody in your firm to sign trust account checks when you're refunding money, having a stamp of your signature, and having somebody have online access to your account that is, helping themselves to that money. That's a huge mistake, and that it happens more often than you realize because we don't talk about things like that. But nobody should have the ability to take money or sign checks on your trust account except for yourself. And then how you're categorizing it on your financial statements. Make sure you're talking to your CPA and you're categorizing it properly on your profit and loss statement. It's it's a liability. So anyway, there's a way to do that. I'm not going to go into it, but there's a way to do that. Make sure that that's right. And then the record keeping errors. Most bar associations have very specific ways they want you to keep records on the money coming in and going out of your overall trust account and your individual trust account. One of the handouts gives you a couple of examples of some reports that meet California standards. Make sure that you understand what you need to have as far as reporting, and make sure that your technology, your billing time and billing software can print that report for you, or it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be on an Excel spreadsheet if that's what you want to do, but it has to be a way for you to tell a client exactly how much money you have of theirs. And every time money comes in or out, it has to be on that ledger card. And you have to be able to produce that ledger card for your client whenever they ask for it. So that's one of the requirements. And again, there's examples in the handouts. Things to think about when you are talking about your overall finances is, again, where are you spending your time? Because your time is money. And what is the value of your time? What does it cost to produce your widget? What does it cost you as a business owner to have an associate bill time for you? Software, insurance, payroll, benefits, all of those things. You should really have a pretty clear idea what it costs you per hour to have that employee work for you so that you know what your profitability is. And always remember, your bookkeeper can't be disbarred. So if there's anything wrong with your trust account, you're going to be disbarred, not your bookkeeper. We all know that that's not an excuse for you. Let's talk about technology briefly. Technology is huge right now. There are so many firms that are making changes in technology. It was happening rapidly. However, with COVID, we all know that everything is just sped up in as far as making sure that you have access to your information outside of your office, meaning not on a server in your office, not on a server in a co-location, but things that are in the cloud. But what you really need, the basics that you need for a firm are you need to be able to have word processing, email, document storage, research, time and billing software, finance software, and some forms or document automation are going to be very helpful for you. So that's kind of what they call the stack. And you can do this in a lot of different ways. The software and hardware, it should be versatile. People should be able to work in a variety of different ways. It must be mobile. It should be able to operate or work on a phone. Your employees should be able to track time on their phone, for instance, and calendar things on their phone. It has to be secure. We all know how important security is right now. And it should be common. And the reason I say it should be common is most of the people that I work with are working with, they're not working with a IT department in their office that can vet and answer questions and do training on their software. Normally they're using outside IT folks, but you want to be able to go into Google and say, how do I download my emails from Outlook? Or how do I make a form with Adobe? You're going to get those answers very quickly. So if you're using some brand new obscure software and you can't find any help for it on YouTube or Google, it's probably not a good software for your firm. You want it to be common enough that you can find information about it easily and you can get help. So if you're using a billing software and your biller is going to be on vacation and you want to outsource that for a month, you want to have a software that is common enough that you can find somebody to help you do that. And the other thing is you want to make sure that there's good support, whether your IT folks understand the software and can support it, whether it's somebody like my team that installed and customized the software, you can call and ask, and what the support is for that particular software when you're calling that company, how quick it is, what it is, where the people are that are giving it, and if they actually know how to use the software. So that's really important when you're looking at choosing what software is right for you. Practice management is a really hot topic in the legal community. And I look at this as 3 different levels of practice management software. The first level is one owner, or maybe there's more than one owner, but you're splitting revenue equally. You don't have to do any complicated calculations on revenue or origination or anything like that to figure out how much money you should be given versus how much money your partner should be given out of the revenue. Normally, these software providers are also connecting with QuickBooks or Xero. These software companies are out there telling firms they can scale. Not really. I think that there are some great small firm practice management software out there, but whenever I'm working with a group of attorneys or several partners that are going to be looking at origination and utilization of resources and try to calculate what it costs their practice group to operate, you need to have something other than these Clio, my case, Practice Panther, Smokeball. Those types of software are not going to scale. They tell you they can scale, and they offer you other add-ins to scale. They might say, oh, talk to this company and they can build you customized reports. Well, those reports are another $5,000 and they're on that company's server, so they're not really your reports. If you don't like them, you just lost $5,000. You know, there's just all of these different things that go in with taking a software like that and attempting to scale it. You can go to the middle ground, which is what most of my clients I recommend go into. There aren't a lot of options in the middle range yet, but they are coming and they are getting better and better. But this is when you have several partners. Maybe they are leaving a firm and they came from a really high-end, powerful practice management software, and they're looking for some of those same features. They're looking for the same reporting capabilities and the same access to information. Those are kind of the middle ground, and they are all in one. So they have your time and billing and your finance, so and your QuickBooks and your practice management all in one. And then you look at the large firms and you're looking at the big guns, the 3E and the Adirant kind of software, and they are for mega firms that have accounting departments and IT departments in their firms, and they manage those high-end software. So when you're looking at practice management software, really research what you're doing versus what you're being told by the sales folks and what you're being told by your neighbor or your fellow bar association members. Every software is not created equal, and every software is not going to work for everyone. Things to think about: hacking. It's out there. That's why we have to do all of the checking on our phone for the code that we have to put into the practice management software and all of that horrible stuff. It's the hackers. They're making us do it. And make sure you're not setting yourself up. The clients that we have worked with that have been hacked have all been on a server, whether the server is physically in their office or it's in a co-location 3 towns away or 3 states away. Their information was on a server and somebody was trying to secure that server. As a small firm, we don't have the resources or the money to really be as secure as an Amazon server in the cloud, or as a Clio software, or as a NetDocuments document management software. We just don't have the money to secure our data the way big companies with a lot of resources do. Make sure that you're being very careful about exchanging client information as well. Outlook now will allow you to encrypt your emails. So if you don't know how to do that with Outlook, Google it. They'll show you how to do it. Or you can have client portals. There's a lot of people that use Dropbox. I'm not a big fan of Dropbox. I don't think that the security is set up for law firms. There are ShareFile and those kinds of things. So make sure that you are exchanging your client information securely, and make sure in your engagement letter you let your client know that you are going to exchange their electronic information securely. And if they are sending you their bank information with a Gmail account and it gets hacked, it's not your responsibility, it's theirs. And then provide them with a way to get you information securely. Your business computer should not be your family computer. I don't think that that needs a lot of instruction. Even if you have a VPN and your family is using the computer, just separate it. Computers really aren't that expensive. Get your family laptop for $400 or $500 and separate your information. Make sure that you're training, not only immediately on implementing new software, but train again in 3 months and train again in 3 months. Make it a budgeted item that you are going to continually get training. Software is evolving all the time. When software is implemented, we learn how to do what we have to do that day. We learn how to enter our time. We learn how to send emails. We learn how to calendar, but we may not learn how to create a process so that I can say I finished this process and then my paralegal gets an email saying, okay, it's your turn to do this. And then it comes back to me and says proof. So there's a lot of really sophisticated features that the software that we're using now has. And if you're not continually getting training on it, you're losing out on those features and the time saving that goes into using those features. That's my down and dirty finance and IT for new firms. Thank you for your time.
I really appreciate the opportunity to present today. I'm going to be talking about the communication strategies for remote practice, and I'd like to begin with the concept of the benefits. But before I do that, I say I have to change my screen here a little bit. Okay, good. So now the benefits of remote practice are significant, and one of the greatest that lawyers enjoy almost immediately or immediately is that there is a significant expense reduction. Everybody knows rent is so high. And so by having a remote practice, you usually operating out of your home or a much smaller facility, and you can save a lot of money. And that money, of course, can be used to invest in business development or any way you want. The other issue, of course, is that it is a superior life experience, and people have spent their whole careers going to the office. That's what they know. But COVID came along and forced us to work remotely, and people have learned to love it. And I've been a remote in my practice for 40 years, and so working out of my home. Fortunately, I have a dedicated home office, but working out of my home has given me the flexibility of raising children and participating in other activities that you just can't do if you're going to the office. It saves all of that commute time. It is such a superior life experience. And another issue is that once you realize that you can operate remotely, you can dramatically increase your geographic reach. I'm in California, although we do our coaching with lawyers across the country. But California lawyers that we talk to in Los Angeles are now actively doing business with clients across the state that they just would not have had the ability to do business with had they not had that a remote capability and a remote world view. And that's what I'm going to try to impart to you today, is this notion of really seeing your practice through the lens of a remote capability, because it completely alters your ability to enjoy your practice and to be successful in your practice. In order to do that, you've got to overcome the obstacles, and they are severe. And the first category of obstacles are old habits. For your entire career, you have been accustomed to going to the office and mingling with the people in your office and visiting with your clients in person. And so that has established a whole bunch of habits that you have that have conceivably worked for you. So you've been rewarded with the habits of interfacing with people at the water cooler and bumping into them in the hallway and walking down the hall and visiting with people, or going to networking meetings and going to marketing events and going to trade shows and physically being in the presence of people. And those habits that you've developed that have worked for you are enjoyable. Needless to say, if you're extroverted and you like being with people, there's a lot of satisfaction in having interpersonal live interaction with people. And so we've developed these habits that we have to really rethink. Another big issue is the issue of misconceptions. I think people have the tendency to believe that clients really would prefer it if you had an office, that it doesn't show well not to have an office, and that just isn't true. Clients want to get their work done, and they want it to be done in the most convenient way possible. And if you can show them a way of doing it without having to come to your office, they like it. And I have seen in many cases clients of mine, lawyer clients of mine, who have invited clients to come back to their offices now that COVID is under control, and they say, no, can't we do this remotely? And that is the majority of people. The fact is that clients will do what you communicate to them is in their best interest. And if you communicate to them that it is in their best interest to interact remotely, that's what they'll do. Another misconception is that you can't bond remotely, and it just isn't true. People think that they've got to have lunch together in order to bond. Now, I don't minimize the fact that having lunch with someone is a pleasant and bonding experience. So it's not that it's a bad way to do it, but if you can figure out an alternative way to do it that's remote, then you avoid having to drive there. You avoid having to have lunch and have a lot of small talk that isn't productive. You avoid the cost. You avoid the parking. But there are misconceptions that these things are required in order to bond. And the concept that I would like to have you really embrace is that bonding happens because of an exchange of value. So as long as you are valuable, people will bond with you. And just as I am giving you information that is valuable remotely, you can be giving information to other people that will allow you to bond with them. So things like the company outing, which were conceived as being a bonding experience, they may be, but they may not be necessary. And in fact, it's my view that they are not necessary. And I can't tell you how many people have told me how much they hate that company picnic or the company outing, and they would prefer to just be allowed to do their work and not have to deal with that whole business bonding experience. So there's lots of misconceptions. And the key here is to notice your objections as you think of them, so that you can analyze, are these rational? Are they irrational? Is this something that really is an obstacle? Or if it is, what can I do to fix it? Or is it really just not an obstacle and I'm just emotionally tied to the old way of doing things? So now I'm going to get into really the tips on how to be more effective in a remote practice. And the first tip that I want to share with you is the idea of structuring your gatherings. In a live office environment, you're going to bump into people in the hallway. You're going to see them at the water cooler. You're going to have meetings together and where they bring everybody into a room. And those things are going to go away. And I frankly have found that to be an advantage and not a disadvantage. But you do need to interact with each other. So you have to get very good at structuring gatherings or structuring your one-on-one meetings. And the first rule that I want to share with you is that we need to stop emailing as much and increase our Zoom conversations and jump on the phone, because having a quick Zoom call gives you the ability to see someone's face. It's very effective. Some people say Zoom is even more effective in terms of reading facial expressions and getting a sense of what people are trying to say than in person. So you want to structure Zoom calls. So you say, let's jump on a Zoom call and real quickly hit the button, get on a Zoom call, and really make it your habit to have as many Zoom calls as you possibly can. You also want to live by the rule, and this is such a wonderful rule, it should guide you for the rest of your career. When you're in a meeting with someone and they are worthy of your attention in a remote environment, you always want to try to schedule the next interaction before your conversation is over. By structuring your follow-up, you eliminate the need to have to try to catch somebody in or try to meet them as you would in your office by walking down the hallway. You really need to learn how to do this. it's not only true with your internal colleagues, it's true in your marketing effort. When you're interacting with prospects or interacting with referral sources, the rule is always schedule the next conversation. Now, when you're having these structured gatherings, you want to make sure that if you're doing it in groups, that everybody has an opportunity to participate. So one of the mistakes that people make is they say, okay, here's a group of people and here's a topic and let's talk about it. And sometimes people are shrinking violets and they don't participate as much as they should. So the rule in group meetings is to go around the room and call on people. We run a lot of group marketing meetings on a remote basis for a lot of clients across the country, and you just wouldn't be successful doing that if you didn't call on each person to make sure that everybody is participating. So I would call on someone, say, what are your thoughts on this? And how do you think we should proceed in this? And so it's not just leaving it open for random people raising their hands, but rather calling on people with the expectation that they will share and participate. And by doing that, you make sure that everybody hears everybody else and everybody sees everybody else and everybody gets a sense of that group meeting. One of the areas of consulting that we do is helping to create a bonded team environment in a remote situation. And people think that this is brand new. It's not new. Since I've been doing this for over 40 years, international lawyers have had remote practices. Lawyers in big firms across the country work with other lawyers that they've never met with in person. So this is not new. It's just that COVID forced it upon us and showed everybody that it works, and in fact, in my opinion, really works better than in person. So you want to create structured gatherings. I want to make it really clear that this does not mean that you all get together and everybody's got a drink and you're trying to create these social gatherings. You don't need those kinds of social gatherings in order to bond. Value and sharing valuable content and being valuable to each other in these structured meetings is an extremely bonding, motivational, team building experience. So create structured gatherings, weekly meetings, monthly meetings, and if you don't have them structured on a regular basis, remember the rule: always schedule the next conversation. Another area of remote communication that I'm particularly excited about is the idea of shared screen delegation. When you are delegating to to a lawyer in your firm, the way to do it is to have a shared screen document, a checklist that allows both of you to simultaneously see that checklist. And the old way of delegating is you'd walk down the hall and you'd go into somebody's room and you'd sit down and you'd say, hey, I want to talk to you about that matter and what needs to be done. And that felt good, but it wasn't as effective as having a checklist of things to do where each of you are looking at the screen at the same document. And I recommend this to lawyers even when they are in the same office, but that they shouldn't leave their office when they delegate. They should jump on a shared screen call and look at a document together. The delegatee can often be the one who updates the document. One of the reasons that shared screen delegation is so effective is that the biggest problem in delegation is that you want to make sure that the person that you're delegating to really understands what it is that you want them to do. And so what mistakes do people make? They send an email. These are the things that I want you to do. And they're not talking, they're just sending an email. That's not a good idea. You should always have a conversation when you're delegating so that you can ask questions. And I mean, you can answer questions and your delegatee can ask questions and you can answer questions. So you want to have the delegatee writing the steps, the next steps on your shared screen checklist. And that way you can see that they understand what it is that you want because they're writing it. So whether you're in person or you're remote, shared screen delegation is absolutely a superior mechanism. In the area of business development, remote is a stunningly effective mechanism when you can attend remote events. And certainly the bar associations are putting on remote events. Certainly trade associations are putting on remote events. You want to try to identify as many remote events as you possibly can, with the understanding that you want a Zoom call that shows you who is in attendance, because the goal is to identify who is in that room. And if you're just attending a CLE program and you're not identifying who those people are in the room, then it's not going to be an effective networking technique, because you can't follow up and talk to them. So your job in a remote practice is to identify remote events where the attendees reveal their names. Now, the other possibility is to request a roster of the people who are in attendance, but you can't always get that. But Zoom calls usually have their name, and so often people will introduce themselves, and you want to try to attend as many remote events as you possibly can. The other issue is to produce your own remote events. Now, this is a wonderful technique that we've been teaching people to do for years. And if you start putting on your own programs, then you can meet people by inviting them to invite other people to your event. So I want to share with you the concept of a joint venture networking event. Now, a joint venture networking event works as follows. You identify other lawyers or other professionals who want to meet the same target market that you want to meet. So for example, let's say you're a corporate lawyer and you want to meet CPAs. And let's say you could put together a joint venture with a banker who wants to meet CPAs, with an insurance agent who wants to meet CPAs, a financial planner who wants to meet CPAs, any other kinds of professionals that want to meet CPAs. And these people become the joint venture partners in your remote networking event. And if each of the participants, each of the joint venture partners invites 5 people to a remote networking event, then you get a chance. If, let's say you have 4 joint venture partners in addition to you, if each one of those invites 5 targets that you want to meet to your networking event, you meet 20 new people, because you are leveraging the relationships of your other joint venture partners. And now we've been doing these for years in person. And then when COVID came along, we helped our clients organize them online, and they are stunningly effective in meeting people. So what you need to think about is, how can you create remote events that will allow you to meet new people? So in closing, I just want to make sure it's really clear that this remote business is not new. It's been around forever. It's not a new concept. It's been tested. It's been done by many, many people over many, many years. We know it works. We know it's effective. We know it's a wonderful experience. And you've probably been doing it on a part-time basis already. How many days of the week are you staying home and working remote from home now? So it's not new. It is unbelievably available to you. The benefits are really quite profound. And I, of course, would be happy to share more information with you personally. And I invite you to contact me, Larry at conecommunications.com. Call me 310-717-0998. We'll schedule a call. And also visit our website at conecommunications.com. There's lots of tips, lots of tools, lots of podcasts. It's all free. And there's a booklet that on business development and on personal productivity that you might find very valuable. So I'm going to wrap it up and thank you very much. I urge you to pursue the idea of a remote practice. I'm very confident it will be effective for you. Thanks a lot.
Hello, everyone. The focus of my presentation will be on the practical hands-on use of specialized AI tools to enhance remote law practices. Of course, these tools could be used in any practice, but they are especially helpful for those who do remote work. And I'm going to give you a glimpse of what is now possible. So like it or not, AI is here to stay, and we must adapt and leverage these tools to remain competitive. I've embraced AI technology to enhance my own law practice. But you know, my perspective is as a maritime commercial transactions attorney. But the tools that I'm going to discuss aren't just for business lawyers. I think it's safe to say that in all of our practices, we analyze information, we research subjects, we draft documents, whether it's pleadings, contracts, demand letters, whatever. So if you analyze, research, and draft, then stay with me and learn this stuff. Now, my disclaimer, these tools aren't perfect, far from it. There's no substitute for your legal experience and judgment. Check and verify everything. I always keep in mind the limitations of AI and the need to protect sensitive data. But the specialized tools for lawyers were built with strict data protection practices in mind. Also, to improve the accuracy of AI results, and you really need to learn effective prompt engineering techniques, AI prompt engineering techniques. Look up the term prompt engineering and learn it. That could be the subject of a whole nother course, but it's important for you to take the time to learn how to use these tools. And if you do, it can increase your productivity, improve the quality of your work, and help future-proof your practice. So now what can you do with specialized generative AI tools for the legal profession? Here's a list of some of what you can do now that wasn't available just slightly over 1 year ago. I'll try to briefly touch on each of these tasks during my presentation, but of course, the big one is legal research. Everybody's done legal research, computerized legal research for quite a while now, but now it is supercharged by AI. It's great to use for deposition prepping, or to review contracts and extract data from contracts, or for policy compliance, evaluate a whole group of contracts based on whether to assess whether they meet certain policies that you specify. Of course, drafting correspondence, drafting email and whatnot, letters. That is something that is made very easy to do with generative AI. Database searches, where you can search an entire database of information for that needle in a haystack. You can create timelines after reviewing a large set of documents. There's document summarization, it's excellent at. And then there's drafting and analysis of contracts. That's more what some of the specialized tools that I'm going to talk about cover. So now let's cover legal research. So goodbye Boolean search, hello natural language search. You give these AI tools instructions, just like if you were speaking to a new associate or a paralegal. Well, sort of. You need to learn prompt engineering to give clear and concise instructions to these AI models to coax what you need out of them. But if you know how to ask, then you can get great results. So some tools will even draft basic legal memos on focused issues, very direct and targeted issues, not multiple issues at once. So on this slide, I have this example of entering a research request. Does an expert witness need formal credentials to testify in New York? And here's the result, a brief answer that summarizes the findings. it starts, and it says, based on the authorities provided, it appears that an expert witness in New York does not need, and then it goes on, it gives the full answer. Then case citations follow. And these are actual cases, real ones, not like what you may have heard in the news about ChatGPT making up information, false information, and presents it confidently as its own, as it's real and accurate. These specialized tools are designed to avoid or at least substantially minimize this. Also not shown here, but you could click a button at the bottom of this page and the program will spit out a basic legal memo in Word form. So it's great for really tackling if you have just a very targeted issue and getting answers. But it can't quite handle more complex stuff than that right now, but I'm sure that's coming. Now, let's turn to prepping for a deposition or creating a detailed list of questions to ask a new client during the intake process, or whatever. It's for whenever you whenever you have a need to for a detailed list of questions. You provide the AI tool with context, who you represent, what areas you will cover in the deposition, and so on. And it will give you a roadmap in return. So here's an example. I'm deposing the CFO of a software company in an antitrust case centered on price fixing. The witness is known to be untrustworthy. And then in this particular program, which I'll describe later, click Generate Topics for the deposition, and you get a list of topics to drill down on. And then, so you see there's, the first one, the CFO's knowledge of any agreements or arrangements with competitors to fix prices, and click that and get a whole list of questions to ask on that particular topic. Let's look at the last one. The CFO's history of truthfulness or untruthfulness in prior depositions or testimony. And here's a little snippet from a very long list of questions the AI created on that topic that was just selected. Have you ever been accused of providing inaccurate or untruthful information in financial reports or testimony? Have you ever been disciplined for blah, blah, blah? So you get the point. This is a tremendous time saver. Now, let's move on to reviewing documents. This is a thorough line-by-line review of a set of documents to answer a set of questions. It can identify key clauses, flag potential issues, and provide insights, really streaming the document review process. Here's a great example of a document review feature that I got when I received training in the use of CoCounsel, which I will describe to you in a little bit. My trainer uploaded 500,000 Enron emails to a database and submitted this question about one of the documents. Does the document contain any evidence of someone concealing something? Now, that was deliberately made a bit vague for demonstration purposes, but look at the result. The document does not explicitly mention concealment, but the mention of an off-balance sheet special purpose vehicle could imply that something is being hidden or obscured. Now, I find that amazing. This is powerful stuff that wasn't available in the former age of keyword searches. Just a little over a year ago, this was not possible. We now have technology that understands context. That's key. Context is one of the most important parts of this AI technology. So, creating a database and searching it. So imagine having a conversation with your files. Now that's a bit dramatic, but I'm not far off. I'm talking about huge volumes of information. This is good for when you have a lot of documents and you need to find the needle in a haystack. Remember, the old way of doing keyword searches is dead. Generative AI searches they search for concepts that match the concepts in your question. So just think of all the information in your files spanning a career. A lot of valuable information there. I know that I reinvent the wheel way too much in my practice because I can't find what I need on the fly. I seem to remember I did something similar a while back, but I don't remember details. But if you upload your files to your own private and protected database, now you can find that sort of stuff. So in this example, you can see you can create a database for various purposes, such as to serve as a brief bank, or for e-discovery, for litigation records or deposition transcripts, or whatever you need to search through. And then you can search through it. In this example, for a database of contracts, I asked if a pandemic disrupted the supply chain, would the manufacturer still be liable? And results provide you with a summary of an answer in summary form, and then citations to the contracts that address the question. You can click on the link to pull up the source document, and you're taken directly to the highlighted language. So I mentioned co-counsel. The examples that I just gave you are what I gave you was a broad overview of the tasks that are possible, and then there's more I could show you, and I will show a little bit more. But right now, I want to touch on contract drafting and analysis. Before I do, the examples I showed you, they're from Co-Counsel by Casetext. It's billed as the world's first AI legal assistant. It truly was the first. They got a jump on everyone else in the AI legal technology space because early on, Casetext partnered with OpenAI, the creator of ChatGPT, to create Co-Counsel. I don't know of any other AI tool for lawyers that has more functionality right now than Co-Counsel, and it's only going to get better. Around 6 months ago, Co-Counsel was bought by the legal resource behemoth Thomson Reuters, which is the owner of Westlaw and the Practical Law series and a whole lot of legal treatises. So all of that will soon be available through Co-Counsel. But it's a powerful tool, but it has a large toolkit, I guess you could say. Co-Counsel does. But although Co-Counsel has a lot of functionality, it only recently added drafting to its features. And it's mainly just for correspondence, not for drafting pleadings or contracts. But there are a lot of tools that are popping up left and right now for specific legal tasks. An example is Spellbook Legal. I have a subscription to this one, and it has great contract drafting capabilities. Its AI was trained using tens of thousands of contracts. One great thing about Spellbook is that it works from within Microsoft Word. It's an add-on to it. You can open an existing contract in Word, then open a side panel, click a few buttons, and have Spellbook perform a review of the contract or whatever the document is. It will alert you if it's a contract, for instance. It will alert you if it's missing standard terms or definitions. It will then suggest wording, even multiple versions of wording of a particular clause. You select the one you like, you click a button, and the clause is automatically inserted into the proper place in the contract in red lines. It will detect aggressive terms, suggest alternatives. It highlights negotiating points. It's sort of like having another set of eyes critique your contracts and make helpful suggestions. Another service similar to Spellbook is Ivo, formerly Lash. They just recently changed the name. I had a demonstration and it was impressive. Very sophisticated functionality. Again, similar to what Spellbook offers. There's others coming out as well. I recently discovered a few more AllDrafts at alldrafts.com, ALLDRAFTS.com, and then LegalOn at legalontech.com. I haven't checked those out yet, but they it looks like that they're doing pretty much the same thing as what Spellbook and Ivo were doing. So you'd have to just look at the different services and compare them side by side, but you get the idea. So continuing with Ivo, here's an example. And this was when it was this is a screenshot from when it was called Latch. So I asked it to review a contract against a checklist of requirements, one of which was do not accept one-way indemnities from the customer to the company. So if you do this and you process, you ask, in this case, Ivo to make that assessment, it will flag any contract terms that are counter to the requirements, and the system will then suggest language to bring the contract into conformity, and it will make redlined edits. It's impressive to see it in practice. There's another example. The question is, are there any clauses missing from this agreement that you would expect to see in a software as a service agreement? And if so, can you suggest wording that I can add into the document? And the response provides that the agreement appears to be missing data protection and security clause, and it suggested wording to use. Tremendous time saver. So another, this is getting a little away from what I've been talking about before. Gavel is another service that it looks very interesting. It has very sophisticated document automation features that are made possible by the use of AI and machine learning. Gavel's all about automated workflows. So its AI has been trained in the nuances of specific practice areas that include corporate law, estate planning, family law, and general law firm administrative documents. And there's more practice areas to come. And so continuing with Gavel, I use a real estate closing attorney as an example. Gavel offers sophisticated and highly customizable client intake tools. So for a standard home sale, for example, a real estate lawyer is going to know what kind of information needs to be gathered to complete a set of closing documents. So you can create an intake form in Gavel to collect the usual information: property address, names of parties, contact details, and so on. But the form also has a series of, and you can set it up with a series of yes or no questions or drop-down lists that you can choose from, that you or the client directly can choose from when entering this information in the intake form. And to give you an example, has the home been inspected by the buyer and is willing to buy as is, whereas, or is the buyer looking to put down a deposit and get exclusivity for a certain period and then perform an inspection and say yes or no? Now, the answer to that question impacts how the closing documents are written. Gavel will insert different clauses in a set of closing documents that depend on what information was gathered in the intake process. So the concept here is that it's much easier to review than to create from scratch. So this would be a really handy tool to increase efficiency and consistency in work product. And it's great for flat fee services, fixed fee services. So I'm going to go into some other materials now, going back to CoCounsel, the summarization feature. And you can use AI, many different AI tools to summarize. And it does the generative AI does a really good job of summarization. But for CoCounsel, it will automatically summarize key points from lengthy legal documents, contracts, and other files. It's great if you need to digest and understand large amounts of information. Like in this example, I inserted a long article and I instructed it to give different levels of summaries: brief, detailed, comprehensive. You can then use the summary in connection with other skills, such as provide more information on section 5B of the summary, as an example. And here's the output of that summary here. This was a law review article I uploaded, and it came up with bullet points and broken down by, groups of pages. Really handy stuff. The tool can analyze contracts against policy guidelines and flag issues that may be non-compliant. That's similar to one of the other skills that I said before. I'm not going to get too much into that one right now. Extracting data from contracts. It can automatically extract critical data points from contracts, and such as parties, dates, payment terms, obligations, and so on. So here's an example, just for you to see in the slides. I intended for this to be take-home materials, so that take to the office materials, for you to refer to, so you can see in detail what these services, or how these services are set up. So yeah, this is extracting data, and this is more of extracting data from contracts. Actually, I'm going to just skip past that. Let's just go into general research. This is not something that is specific to the legal profession, but it's something that's very useful, and I want to touch on it. It wasn't long ago when I needed an answer to a question. I'd Google it, get a list of results to sort through, and then ChatGPT burst on the scene, quickly followed by Google's Bard, which is now called Gemini. And now I rarely use Google or even ChatGPT. If I have a general question about anything, or I need detailed step-by-step instructions for something, I ask Perplexity. Literally, I can dictate the question and engage in a conversation with it. So here's a screenshot showing what the home page of Perplexity looks like, which is very similar to ChatGPT. And here's an example. Provide step-by-step instructions to a required person who electronically signs a document via DocuSign to upload a copy of their government-issued ID for identity theft purposes. I use this all the time for step-by-step instructions for anything. And here is the output. This provides more. I find that the results from Perplexity are more accurate than the general public generative AI tools like ChatGPT. And what I really like is it cites sources for its responses in the footnotes that you can click and you pull up the source material and read it. It even suggests follow-up questions, and it's much less wordy and verbose than ChatGPT can get. I'd get the $20 per month paid plan. It's much better results, and than you get from the free version. Now, the problem, you have to limit the use of your data. Many of these AI tools that are available to the general public use your searches to train and improve their AI models. But this can be turned off in Perplexity settings if you have a paid prescription. It can also be turned off if you have a paid subscription to ChatGPT for $20 a month. Tools like Gemini, last I checked, on the other hand, don't offer that level of privacy protection. So keep that in mind. So if you're on ChatGPT and you don't see this black box on the left side of the screen, that means it is using or can use your data. So you have to go in the settings and turn that off, and turn it off so it doesn't use your information. So that's about it. This is a broad overview of the landscape right now. It's constantly changing. Just yesterday, OpenAI announced a major advancement with the release of GPT 4.0, which greatly improves processing times. Now you can do, I just saw a demonstration of real-time translations, language translations. You have one person speaking into their phone and in one language, and then ChatGPT translates it instantaneously to the other person in that language, and then that person responds in kind. And it's next trip I take, I'm definitely going to have this tool with me. My next trip I take to a place that speaks a different language. So these tools are constantly changing, they're constantly evolving. What we have available 1 year from now, who knows? But it's something that we need to learn and we need to adapt to, like I said in the beginning, or else you're going to be left behind by lawyers who have learned it and have adapted. So that's about it. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'd be pleased to answer them. Here's my email. And if you want to connect on LinkedIn, whatever, I'll be pleased to answer your questions. Thank you.